So davening is super hard for me. Yeah, I have a hard time with davening because I have this sort of Maimonidean objection to davening, which is the way that you're taught davening when you're a kid is you're talking to God, and you're asking God for stuff, and God gives it to you. God is gumball machine. And I'm not a big fan of the God is gumball machine idea. I think that the idea that you use davening as a way to remind yourself to work in consonance with what God wants of you. And so when you're davening, it's really more about you than it is about God. I think it's a good way to view it. I also find it very difficult to do that in the context of a very well-structured davening. I mean, it's very difficult for me to read the same words over and over every single day, 3 times a day in Shemona Esrei, and feel like I'm getting the most out of these words. And you can read Rav Schwab on these things, and you can bring commentaries, and you can try. But still, when you're doing it every single day, 3 times a day, it's hard not to eventually just find your way. Like you find your head's in a different place while you're in the middle of Shemona Esrei than it should be like directly on the words and on what you're davening for. And so on a conceptual level, the idea of a not systematized davening is very attractive to me. Like the idea that I get more out of when I'm thinking about God most is when I'm actually reading Rambam, or when I'm actually doing learning, or even when I'm studying Sorba Mirabanan, right? Like when I'm doing these sorts of stuff, that I connect more with that. I connect more with the intellectual side of Judaism. And when it comes to the spiritual side of Judaism, it really is more like the ceremonial stuff, right? Like when I'm dancing on Simchas Torah with my kids, particularly with my kids, I feel it a lot. When I'm dancing with my kids, when I'm doing Kiddush on a Friday night, and my kids are there, that kind of stuff is very, but like davening is hard for me. And so when people, have a hard time with davening, I totally get it. I also think that, frankly, we in the Ashkenaz community kind of do davening wrong. It's less of a communal activity than mumble and finish, right? It's like you mumble through a paragraph of Pezukah de Zimra, and then somebody says really fast the last 2 lines. I mean, listen, I do it. I daven super fast. When I daven for the Amud, and I'm davening Shachris, like I'm famous for being able to knock that out super duper quickly.
Shocker.
I can't believe that.
Like I'm the guy you go to when you have like 11 minutes for Shachris and you need to like really move it. And I'm not trying something to brag about, frankly, because that's like pure. Like, that's like pure. Just get it done by rote. Like if you're looking for by Hallel, like so I davened Hallel yesterday by the minyan. And so I like to, the Hallel I like to sing, and that's really good stuff. Like when you actually are able to add some tunes in there and really sing it communally, the Sephardim do this more naturally. Like Sephardic davening, which takes 1 million years. It's, I can say this, my wife's Moroccan and my entire in-laws are, they daven Sephardi. And I went, originally, the first school I went to was Maimonides in LA, which is a Sephardi school. So I actually learned to daven Sfard before I learned to daven Ashkenaz. But the way that Sephardim daven is much closer to a communal experience than typically the way that Ashkenazim daven. My theory of davening is that basically it lengthened over time, specifically because it started off and people actually davened like the Sephardim. They're all saying it together and they're like, this is taking too long. Let's speed it up. And then they're like, yeah, but you know what? Now that we speeded it up, it's only taking half as long. So we can add some more text at the end. There's now room for more text. And so it's just now davening is 300 pages. But that sort of approach, if the davening is about the communal experience of it, then more singing would be good is I think the message, which is weird coming from me who is not a huge fan of
no objection singing. From the Hasidim over here on people. But we heard your challenge to the Orthodox community to
speak up,
share our views exactly with the world. I'm wondering if you're open for a challenge.
Alrighty.
a little Nasa V'Nishma. So the challenge is I've heard this, where if you want to know where God expects results from you, pay attention to where there's some resistance. Pay attention to where there's, a challenge. And I think in the position that you're in, you can be an incredible symbol of someone who has grown through that challenge of davening. And maybe at some time in the future, maybe in 6 months from now, maybe in a year from now, our listeners, I'm sure, would love to hear how that spiritual journey, right? We're spiritual beings in a human condition, right? Not human beings on a spiritual journey. And I'm sure they'd love to hear how that relationship with davening might have developed further.
I like that. That's good. Okay. I'll take that up. If you have any sources you want to send me and some advice on that, let me know.
Will do.